Nice to meet you all. My name is Viviana Caroll. I'm one of the National Trust archaeologists, and here with me today is one of the lovely lead rangers, Patrick Edwards, who is based at Cardmill Valley in Shropshire. I thought before I start talking about what I personally believe and what most of our community thinks is a very successful monitoring program, I thought I would just introduce a little bit about our job as archaeologists within the National Trust, because you wouldn't believe how many people still don't know that there are actual archaeologists working for the National Trust. So nationally, we have a team of around 16, 17 archaeologists working for the National Trust. I am part of the Midlands and East of England team. I'm really lucky to work along some amazing people. We'll all have individual roles and responsibility, but we work very closely together as an integrated team to provide cover across the region. Obviously, geography and working partners often means that work is shared according to availability, existing skill sets, but it also, let's face it, is a great opportunity to encourage professional development and training. The map displayed here on the right is just to give you a geographical representation of the properties across the Midlands and East of England and the geographic area that we are covering, which contains around 20,648 archaeological and heritage assets, 8,458 of which are flagged for monitoring purposes. And the way the flagging is taking place, it's based on significance criteria and level of preservation and significance in the wider landscape. We also take care within a region of 124 scheduled monuments. So basically, in a nutshell, our job is to ensure the long-term preservation of earthworks, monuments, buried remains, which sounds very easy, but most of the time is quite challenging. So this encompasses a significance of archaeological sites and landscapes in our care, advise on size of projects, prepare briefs, appointing and managing archaeological contractor, maintain the records, which have been mentioned before. We are using the HPSMR as a way to manage and monitor and advise on the historic landscape. And a big part of our job is also working with volunteers, but also provide and instigate projects, community projects, and public engagement events and activities. The HPSMR, I am a bit of a freak of the HPSMR, and I'm a bit addicted to the historic environment record database, I'm afraid, but I think it is vital for our daily job, and it is also vital for our volunteers, because good data sets means that things becomes much more easy when people are on site and they need to look for different sites and assets. What is even more important, that apart from being a repository for information about the Trust archaeology and historic landscapes, which includes a huge amount of sites of all types and periods, it is directly linked to a public accessible online platform, which is what we call the National Trust Heritage Records Online. And the is directly linked to the HPSMR. Inside data are very transparent and available to all the public. And the very same data are most of the time also used by our volunteers to support their monitoring activities. Very similar to the HER model, all the information about specific sites, their description, the level of significance, the management decisions, the archives and the reports, it's all available online. So we perfectly know that our historic environment is experiencing unprecedented pressure and new threats. Just name a few. We talk a lot about these all morning: climate change, the need to make sure that the outdoors are accessible, and that constant input of creating new experiences, and of course, nature recovery. At the same time, I have to say that the National Trust is evolving its conservation philosophy, management and performance monitoring. It is clear that in order to adapt to new threats and challenges, adopt a new conservation approach, we will need enhanced data for our conservation assets, which supports informed property decision-making and directs regional and national support. And I have to say that in HART, we believe we have developed the most effective effective and efficient model to meet our needs that is aligned with our values and proven in practice. But it's not something that we achieved overnight. And I think Duncan will agree with me. It's still very much a live process, and it's constantly under sort of enhancement and improvement. But if I need to give you a brief development of the program, I would say that everything started in 2011. With the site, with the demand of sites and management and conservation needs. The conservation performance indicators, which was the system that we used internally at the National Trust, was developed as a way of measuring how well we were doing by charting progress towards achieving our conservation objectives. So basically, it was a numerical indicator that could sit alongside measures that are more easily quantified, say, for example, financial performance, visitor numbers, and membership. The CPI process was grounded in knowing and measuring the condition of our most significant assets across a property from a conservation perspective. So this was also a time of change for the National Trust, and it seems that it's quite the main question that started arising: why is archaeology always so low ranked in the Midlands? This was the big question faced by my colleagues at the time. And what can we do to address this issue? Why does it really matter? So between 2011, 2014, my colleague really tried to find a sustainable model that could support our work as archaeological consultants. And of course, we didn't want to invent the wheel, and we started looking outside the trust. What are the successful models out there? What can inspire us to come up with a sustainable system we can use? And pretty much in December 2012, Nimang and Rachel Hall, archaeologists for the West Midlands and East Midlands, came up with a pilot study, and it was a comparative study where we're comparing running monitoring using archaeological contractors, using the time of National Trust archaeologists, and using the time of our volunteers. These comparative studies, when they looked at the results, it was pretty clear that financially was advantageous because it was a big saving in using our volunteers. But we were quite impressed also about the public benefit and the impact on our volunteers in running this type of program. In August 2014, they to secure through the Innovation Fund and secure a one-year contract for a HART and HPSMR data officer. And in August 2014, they placed the bid for the development of a web portal, which is the Heritage Records Online, which I mentioned about before, and develop a smartphone app, which, believe it or not, is still on stages of development, but we're almost there. We are almost there. So I said it before, it's not something that really happened overnight. 2014 and 2017, it was a very critical moment for the Midlands. And all these background, and please keep in mind, I'm talking as the Midlands and East of England archaeologists. So we kind of set up the best practice for the development of this model as a inspiration for other regions. But at the time for us, it was a critical moment because it's when we really started setting up what we call the HART groups, the Heritage and Archaeology Rangers team at different properties, and we started monitoring the impact and the effectiveness of this monitoring program. So which involved training, working closely with operation teams, and providing cost support to the volunteers on site. In 2017, I've been really lucky to be appointed by the National Trust. I was at the time assistant archaeologist, and a big part of the work that I was doing was to keep up the momentum and keep working very closely with the volunteers. And I would say time, resources, passion, and transparency are the very key elements to work with volunteers. And I personally believe any community groups and any type of audience. So from this regional approach, we started realizing the effectiveness and the impact on the way we advise on the conservation of places, and we started trying to push for a more national approach. Across nationally, the National Trust counts over 95,000 archaeological assets. Some of them are sitting within 11 World Heritage Sites, and we look after around 1,700 scheduled monuments. We are 16 archaeologists. We would never be able to do this on our own. And also, I have to say, the level of knowledge, when you start working with the volunteers, when you start working with these type of audiences, you just realize the level of knowledge of these people. And I am not ashamed to say that most of the time say, I'm fine, because they know more than what I do. I can give technical support. I can provide that technical knowledge. But when it's a matter of being out and about in the landscape, they are the experts. So it's extremely important, the work that we're doing with the volunteers. In a nutshell, let me just present you how the program works. First of all, it is essential that the data are accurate. The data that we're providing the volunteers with are accurate, and over the years we've been going through internally through a big enhancement program of making sure that the data are spatially detailed, that the summaries are clear for the volunteers in order to find sites when out in the landscape. Then we provide a training, which is usually a two-part experience. There is a theory session, and then there is a field session just to give a flavor of what the monitoring is all about. Then the surveys take place. Our volunteers are usually going out during winter time for obvious reasons, because, hey, it's easy to find sites in winter when vegetation is low. But I have to say that historically, it was also a strategic choice, because by doing the monitoring during winter time, then we were able to elaborate the results of the monitoring between winter and the beginning of the new financial year. So property teams didn't have an excuse, we don't have the budget, we don't have the resources to doing what you're asking us to do. So it was very much strategic. Again, different regions operate very, very differently. We start in, because of external threats like climate change, in winter is becoming more and more hard for volunteers to go out, because sometimes it's simply too wet, and in some occasions they need a canoe to actually reach a field. There is some potential archaeology, so we can become more flexible. But in principle, that is still the kind of approach that I tend to apply. Really important is that the results of monitoring then feed into a conservation principle. We can I draw some basic statistics. I can come up with an action list, and then I can go back to colleagues like Pat today, discuss the sort of action that came from the monitoring. But what is even more important is the fact that the results of the monitoring then are fed back to volunteers, which are the main reasons why we do have those data. And when I started working for the trust, I immediately realized there was a gap in the process, which was the volunteers were basically feeling like, you're asking us to go out in the field and really you don't know what's happening today. What's the follow-up? What are you doing? What we're doing? So I just wanted to make sure this circle is complete. And also we need to consider most of the time the volunteers that are doing the monitoring of sites are most likely to be the volunteers that will be involved with the rangers or countryside managers or any other members of the level that are needed. They will be the one that will complete the task as well. The ambition is that scheduled monuments are visited at least every 3 years. This is the principle, and all other sites are visited at least every 5 years. I personally ask our teams if any site has been recorded as in poor, bad, or very bad condition. I would ask them to go back every year. I'm quite vicious. If there is an action list and people take responsibility to do something, I will ask the volunteers, keep going and check every year until that condition score is adequate to our standards. The HART groups are usually property-based. I know some of my colleagues just work with one team that cover different properties. I quite like the approach that we are using in the Midlands, because with each individual property has their own team of volunteers. Some of these volunteers are not just volunteering for the archaeological aspect and the heritage aspect, aspect. They're most of the time involved already in ecology surveys. They are involved in gardening. They are involved in visitor experience and all other aspects of the National Trust work. So to me, it's really meaningful that each property has their own team. As I mentioned before, they know the landscape very well. They sometimes don't even need a map to find sites. Sometimes they really need a map because it's pretty impossible to find some of the sites. But they know the places, and there is a great sense. I don't like using the word ownership, because we don't own anything. We are taking care, and we have a responsibility, and this definitely increases their responsibility, but most importantly, their understanding of the value of the historic landscape. And what is even more important, the same volunteers are the people that are meeting the wider public at our places. So they can talk and they can share what they learn, and they can tell them that it's more than a mansion. That is more than a cafe where you can go and have a coffee. So this is really, really important. And I'm really like that I work along with fantastic property teams, fantastic rangers. We are very, I have to say that, we are very lucky that more and more we have volunteer coordinators that can relieve a little bit the work of rangers and curate the volunteering side of this. From our side as archaeological consultants, we are always there to support not only our colleagues, but the volunteers for additional information or support that might need on site. They are very, very self-independent. They can organize themselves, but always talking to the lead person at the property, and they're just fantastic, and they find their own way to tailor the program in accordance to their needs. They can go and do things at the best time when it's more convenient for them. They manage the results of the monitoring directly, uploading them on the heritage records online, and therefore I automatically can see them on our system. And the results of what they are doing then can be easily visually represented using pie charts. I was talking about before how important it is for me to go back to our volunteers and talk about the results, so we can have a clear understanding of the level of condition, the level of vulnerability, and the level of stability of our places. This is just to give you a glimpse. In the Midlands, between 2019 and 2024, our volunteers have monitored 4,484 sites. But what is even more important from a property point of view, it's what are the damage agents that are affecting and threatening our sites. So together we can really sit down and come up with a good action plan. We talk a lot about evaluation of public engagement activities, community archaeology projects. My background is as a community archaeologist, and I do know how important evaluation is. But I also understand that it's easier to measure the impact that projects have on people when you have the same people working on a project constantly for a longer period of time, where you have a chance to create a benchmark, so you can run a survey at the very beginning of a project and then constantly monitor the effectiveness of this program. I had volunteers working with me for 7, 8 years, and some other volunteers have been involved with the program even longer. And there are challenges. I mean, how great we are. We always talk about the beautiful things. We always talk about everything is wonderful, working in community, but there are real challenges. People get tired after a while. You need to find way to, to get... to find new ways to stimulate the interest and to find new ways to engage as well. Some people just feel like it's not for me anymore. Some people are just, I don't really fancy going out and walk because, my legs are getting older and I can't do it. So the beauty of the monitoring and what we are doing is that there are so many different aspects that you can contribute. Some people can actually sit comfortably from home, have a look at the LiDAR, see if you can spot a new site, that then the team can go out and ground proof. And you're just happy with the photography side of things. So it's the way that you tailor activities around their needs, which I have to say, for us, it just works really, really well. And I just wanted to share with you some of the comments from some of our volunteers. Sylvia is one of our volunteers at Brockhampton Estate in Herefordshire. I love the fact that Sylvia is saying to do something completely different. Do we really need to provide life-changing experiences in what we are doing? Can we just provide something unique that somehow in that particular moment in life had made a change? To learn new skills and contribute to my local community, a much better understanding of the English countryside. I love the comments from our WIMPO volunteers. My colleague Giles has worked closely with the East of England teams and is setting up a new HART teams. I love what they say. We developed our confidence. We found ourselves challenged and learning new skill. We developed friendships. It's all these, parallel values and positive benefits that a lot of time we do not consider. Amazed by the rich history condensed onto the Wimpole estate. So I would like now to, so you don't think I'm just making up things, I would like to invite my colleague Patrick. I have worked with Patrick for how long? 7 years?
I can't remember a time when I didn't work with you, Vivi.
Yes, it was great fun. Yes. Yeah. You do put up with me, I would say.
Still in therapy. Thank you very much. I feel like a slight imposter here. I am a ranger. I am one of them horrible people that go around the countryside digging holes. She tells me off quite a lot for that. I work in the Shropshire Hills, area of standard natural beauty or protected landscape, national landscape nowadays, SSSI, registered common. And I rely massively on Vivi to come out and spur me on with enthusiasm and passion. She is small in stature, but she does tell me off quite often, and that is massively important. The volunteers that she's referring to are the Wednesday Action Group. They are known as the WAGs. 2 of them are married, so they are WAGs. And as Grace said, they hate the weather. They've had enough of the weather. Vivi makes them go out in the winter, and they grumble a lot, and I have to force a lot of cake and tea into them to make them want to do it all the more. They do an absolutely brilliant job. They've been out and about for the last few years. The thing is that Vivi has put in all of that enthusiasm, all of that training with them. And then when new members have come along, they've learnt from the other ones. So they've gone out and that news has spread. And like Vivi says, they're people from the area, so they can find most of the things, apart from one thing which you've never been able to find. I don't think it exists. I think it's a trick one that she's put in for me. And then they can go out and they tell other people, and they meet other people, and they bump into other people. And then maybe when there's a biking event on, they go, oh, best not to go over that little mound, because that is actually a medieval enclosure. So it's, they've got the understanding, the knowledge, and they've got the passion, and they've got the local whereabouts of everything. What's been really interesting for us is, like I said, Vivi says, they're part of the whole process now. So they go out begrudgingly in the cold and the rain, with their little bits of paper, and they assess all of them. They come back, we report it all back to Vivi and her team, And then we come up with a nice action plan. And then, we've been trained up. The volunteers have all been trained up by Historic England to go and do some repairs. We've got some extra funding, as you can see. Rob doing his best death impression there. But we had some funding and they were all able to get trained up to use scythes. I keep well away from them when they're swinging them around. But it's just really, really good. So we can do some traditional skills on, that is medieval farm enclosure. And so it's rather than putting a vehicle on it or, RoboCut with its spiked wheels, we can go up there with the volunteers. We have had some issues. The middle two photos represent Haddon Hill, which is another enclosure that was up on the hill, and that was experiencing a little bit of erosion, which the volunteers assessed. And with working with Historic England, we put in a zigzag boardwalk over the rampart to try and get people over it. And sadly, after the volunteers had spent a day and used up over £1,000 worth of materials, somebody came along with a reciprocating saw and cut it up and decided that they would launch it down the hillside towards our flock of Hebridean sheep. No sheep were injured. That's good. But it was really sort of quite a sort of harrowing bit, really. The volunteers spent a lot of time. They'd carried all the materials in. They'd worked hard building it, and somebody, rather than coming up to us and saying, "Hey, why have you put a zigzag path over that little mound?" They decided to take things into their own hands. Curse their cotton socks. But brilliantly, the volunteers rebuilt it, and we put up some interpretation signs, which you can see there. But, it's a wild landscape. Do we want massive amounts of interpretation signs all the way around? It's the old-fashioned interpretation. Should it be QR code? Should it be sort of, tapping the button in your head and getting an instant download? You've all got that, yeah? Yeah. And then on the right there, you'll see a little bit of work on Bodbury Hill. Somebody had Badbury rings or something. They don't really go far with these names, do they? It's small, limited number of names for things. And that's our Iron Age Hill fort. And that's I was getting a little bit of training there from Alison, who was with Historic England. And again, it's just brilliant. They're out and about. They're working together as a team. So there's all that well-being that we talked about. They're learning new skills. They're getting a sense of ownership. They're getting an understanding. They can act as brilliant ambassadors and go out and tell other people. And the benefits of working for the National Trust as a volunteer, oh my God, so many. You get your 20% off your scones, which are lovely. They might be woke, but hey, they're lovely. You get your 20% off. You get lovely uniform like this as well. See, look, Rob there in his lovely Ranger jacket. You get all of this, and you get to be outside in lovely countryside and work with Vivi, who tells you off quite often because you haven't completed the work. Sorry, Vivi. Let's do it. Sorry. She does hit me a lot. No, moving on quickly. But quickly there's a little bit of cross-dyke work that we've done. We started off and we've experimented a couple of different things. So we used to put that geotextile over the top, and we found out that the ponies on the hill really enjoyed eating it. So that didn't work too well. So we've had to sort of work slightly differently. And then the two photos on the right are another burial mound that had a footpath just clipping the edge there, and so we've put some posts in and some small little signs again just to highlight that. But just to add, it's just really working really well, together. As rangers, we are pulled from block toilets, car park machines not working, tree on a fence, small boy trapped in a well kind of scenarios. And we need people like yourselves and Vivi to come along and say, hey, you need to sort out a little bit of archaeology stuff as well. One of the main challenges for us is that we never have any budget built into our year for doing archaeology stuff. And I find it's easier to, ask for forgiveness than beg for permission. And so I just do the work that Vivi tells me. I'm more scared of Vivi than my line manager. So, So I just get away with it like that. But it's just really working together, and to have people with that knowledge base, coming to us and saying, Patrick, come on. And Vivi does all of the background work, gets all the forms ready, and feeds back. And that is the main thing as well, is getting that information back to the volunteers, and then they go, yeah, that's really nice. And the thing is, they don't have to do it every 3 years because they're out and about walking on it every other week. They know what that feature is. They can stop somebody and say, hey, maybe not ride your bike over that way. So it's just works really, really well.